Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And today, we're going to be taking a look at the latest and newest Q&A series from the CoD team titled Hall of Kings. Now, you might be wondering what Hall of Kings is. We're going to tell you. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up, because that helps out a lot. Hall of Kings is, in short, a smaller, condensed version at the moment of the King's Guard that I've been doing on my Discord for a while. Now, what is the King's Guard? Well, the King's Guard is a collection of alliance leaders / kingdom leaders where we put everyone in a place together where they can conversate, they can discuss, but also they can network. They can meet other people, they can make introductions, they can build rapport and relationships with others, and it just makes it easy to be able to have a list that you can reach out to. And essentially, if you want to have a conversation about KVK diplomacy, if you want to have conversations about migration or recruitment, if you just want to have general discussions and do some theory crafting or some think tanking, that's where this idea really stemmed from. And it also makes it a lot easier when I do like my state of the game questionnaire, which we do, like twice a year, once every 6 months or so. And the latest one allowed for me just to reach out to these people, along with I have a separate spreadsheet that is a little bit more up to date. I typically go through mine every couple months and do a massive update. Aside from anyone that reaches out to me individually for an update, which I think there's still one or two that I have to. But the idea here for Hall of Kings is that they're adding some people, and you could see that here as an example if we go to Doomstar, he has a legendary king role. Some people on the Discord have that. Those people have access to what I imagine and would assume is channels, and maybe they're asking them questions and getting feedback from these people, and that's where we're getting this Hall of Kings Q&A number 1. With that explanation out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in. So, the first Q&A session between R5's and the game producer, okay, that's interesting, has come to a close. In this session, we asked the Kings what are, according to you, the 3 most critical points that need a rework change, stuff that needs to be added in CoD right now. 13 Kings, okay, so just a small group. And most likely, all of these Kings also filled out my State of the Game questionnaire that we did, and feedback, which we have a number of videos that we'll be putting out about that, where we go more into a deep dive on their long-form responses. Their valuable responses, and the game producer answered these questions, feedback, and suggestions with care. Here is a summary of the first session of the R5 producer Q&A. This is cool. The only thing I would say here is I would almost love for them to also consider other people that are just not R5. I understand if you're just doing it the first time, but down the road it would be awesome. That's one of the things I really liked about Infinity Kingdom when they did these community feedbacks, is not only did they invite alliance leaders, but they invited community like knowledge-based members, people that were like really heavily contributing, and they also invited some content creators. So they kind of had this nice mix, if you will. But again, fine to do it, fine to do it the first time, especially if that's kind of where you're going with it, and obviously fine to do it continuously. It would just be nice if maybe eventually down the road, however many we might be in, if they branched it out a little bit more to include more diverse cast members, if you will. Okay, first topic. Migration server. Overall, we understand players' concerns about the current migration system, and we are working on improvements in the upcoming 1.0.33 patch. We plan to make the following changes to improve migration experience. Shorten migration cooldown to 60 days. We know that. Going from 400 to 300k in permits, and then also allowing for you to purchase them for 1,000 gems. Migration, show players the exact migration status. We understand the desire for players to easily access accurate server status to help with migration. However, as mentioned previously, we plan to approach this differently. Server capacity is largely based on overall server power, which is determined by the combined power of active accounts. This is a little bit more detail. Since a player's individual power includes heroes, artifacts, legions, buildings, technology, etc., we have not yet determined the best way to display these indicators. We are still discussing how to address this, and will update the community once the solution is finalized. Thank you for your understanding. So, kind of obviously not really anything as far as progression on what the next step will be, but at least indicating and giving a little bit more information that it's, again, combined power of active accounts, which I guess is kind of somewhat known because of with the system they have of removing inactive accounts on the kingdom that should be, and then they don't count towards, right, which is up to 30 days if you're City Hall 25, and then it's lower amounts of times if you are lower level. And then we get the, once it's determined, right, they'll go ahead and put something out. Again, if they're working on something because they want to present it in a certain way, I think that's okay. However, being able to know exactly, and keep in mind, the preview beta, I do think is a good first step. And I would really like to just see that expanded on first. I would like to be able to see where every single player has to be accepted or denied, and meaning everyone has to apply to the kingdom regardless of your power. And then the king or queen and or potentially any of the king ministers or I guess king management titles there maybe can also view this. But at minimum, the king or queen, where they can also view the preview bar, that migration preview bar. So they have a checkbox for anyone that has applied. And if they select that checkbox, then the bar can move up or it moves down. So it'll go more towards crowded and full, or it goes more towards normal and active. And so that, to me, I think is the next step that would be most appropriate. So that way, not only can the alliance leaders see the migration preview bar, but the king-queen can also see that as well, depending on who they accept. In addition, if you want to expand it beyond that, it would be where you can actually then accept people that have applied, because the migration preview doesn't allow for you to then migrate everyone in as the alliance, even though that would be dope if you could apply, if you could select players in your alliance and then select to basically migrate them to where you put everyone on a waiting list. And then if the king or queen checks that box for your team, it checks it, and then it applies for all the players that have applied. So, right, it might move the bar more than if it's just an individual player. But the king or queen should be able to then actually accept people, right? So we need to have it be the preview bar for the king, queen, and then you need to take it the next step where alliances can apply with those people, and kings or queens can accept those people where the migration preview bar is accurate. Right, so it's not just something you go and do and you take a look at, but then you have to go migrate. You have to go apply to migrate separately. Everything should kind of be smooth in that in that way. So that's what I would like to see it kind of progress to. But obviously, having more information about how the server itself and the capacity that is presented for those numbers, I do think it would be nice to have a little bit more detail. But that would be some of the first steps or the next steps I would think would really help. No migration during KVK. This is, man. So this kind of goes towards the BTR situation and a few others, but the BTR one probably is most notable. Sadly, I really wanted to talk about it when it was happening. But in short, right, from what I understand and from what has been communicated to me is that BTR migrated out however many people, if it was a core group, if they were thinning out, but it was a decent number. And this was after they were already in their KVK and after they had already worked out like who was going to be working with who or who was allying more or less. That's what I heard. And when they left, it basically kind of screwed over the sides, if you will, compared to if they wouldn't have factored in BTR for those allies or something else. And so, again, I'll give you my thoughts on this in a moment. I just want to read what they say. Currently, we have no plans to restrict migration during KVK for the following reasons. Limiting migration options would restrict many players. Allowing players to migrate to the home realm of other servers while still being locked in KVK would create unfair advantages in terms of server power and potentially lead to mercenaries, which would negatively impact the battle experience for normal players. While the idea is intriguing, we suggest addressing the issue through social means. Okay. So there's kind of I'm happy that they're giving more thought on how they think about this. So I'm going to address both sides. The first, limiting migration options would restrict many players. Okay, this is just kind of a given. It doesn't really address the challenge here. Now, keep in mind, it's not as though we're having many big alliances that are just dipping out of KVKs halfway through, right? Most likely, these players probably were already planning to move out in the more likely scenario, and they just had to wait for that kingdom to hit pre-war. However, do I feel that can be incredibly... do I feel that the impact of an alliance moving or migrating out of a KVK can affect the larger KVK, meaning the other kingdoms, the other alliances, and more importantly, all of the other players there, where if that could have been a balanced KVK and then it turned out not to be, or it just impacted the KVK in some way that limited the playing experience that any number of players in that KVK could have had but are now deprived of, yes, that's not a good thing. And so my solution would just be align more of the kingdoms up on the same timelines, work towards that effect of where you're either reducing the KVK length or you're increasing the KVK length in efforts to get as many kingdoms into the same pools as possible. So that way, if people want to migrate out, everyone's aligned. Everyone's lined up, right? having this thing where now I understand that, yes, you have newer kingdoms that are coming in, some of the OG kingdoms, but keep in mind, player drop-off is a big thing, and you're seeing often a lot of the OG kingdoms players are moving to younger kingdoms. So if you think about the fact that people are going to spread the wealth over a period of time, you may not really view it as being overall that impactful. Now, yes, some kingdoms that are older have obviously had opportunities to have certain, let's just say, heroes and other resources or materials that they've been able to accumulate. However, do you overvalue that when you are kind of stuck of having the same more or less cycle of kingdoms that you're going to see every season? I would argue that most people would rather have more kingdoms in the kingdom pool, so that way more fair matchups can be made and they get to see new faces, rather than oh no, we don't want to be there because we're going to get completely kind of outplayed when, again, you're still going to have people that will migrate out of older kingdoms and go to younger ones. I mean, there are some solutions to this where they just make heroes a little bit more accessible throughout, even if it is a younger kingdom, whether that's through putting more in the gold chest, if that's allowing for players to access them once they get into Season of Strife. Maybe once they get into Season of Strife, they can just access all heroes, whether that's purchasing and or heroes over time get put into the gold chest, like one of the things that we've talked about. There's a couple ways to do this, but I think the most important one to take away here is that if you had more kingdoms in a larger kingdom pool, and let me give you an example of what I mean here, right? So let's show this, and let me put this kind of top right so it's just a little more clear. What I mean is going in to this, your pre-war server. So this is a kingdom pool that's going into the next KVK. What I'm saying is make it so that way all the kingdoms that are currently in this, right, Season of Strife, and or in this one, right, so Calling Courage of Winter Plan, make it so that way more of those kingdoms end up in the pre-war server, right? And so that's where I'm getting at. Because right now, the pre-Strife, pre-war kingdoms are aligned for end of season timeline-wise to go into the next KVK with the current pre-war kingdoms that are in Season of Strife. What I'm saying is work to make efforts to where over time you keep adding more and more kingdoms to this pool, but it would just be nice if it was done. Now, yeah, there are some new kingdoms that have been added to this pool now, which again, most notably are the pre-Strife ones, but we need to be working to align more of the kingdom timelines for the kingdoms that are currently in Winter is Upon Us and Calling of Courage, with the idea being that eventually every kingdom in Season of Strife will be on the same timeline. That, I think, would be the greatest help in addition on this front. Now, the second part here is allowing players to migrate to the home realm of other servers while still being locked in KVK could create unfair advantages. Now, keep in mind, you cannot migrate to kingdoms that are in KVK. I personally do not believe that you should be able to do that because they have to register with a certain amount of power. That power gets locked in, and they get matched based on that locked-in power and obviously other factors. So, yeah, that shouldn't happen. But, so again, I agree here that they very much could create unfair advantages, and I actually think that their line here really hits this on the head. Migration permit cost. We will have an internal discussion about lowering the number of member points required to purchase migration permits. Okay, does that mean again? Approval of general migration. Currently, we're not planning to allow kings to approve or reject general migration requests, as this could leave some players without a place to migrate. So, again, this one is hard for me to swallow because this one is essentially one of the most important things that a lot of people have been advocating for, and I've very much been at the forefront because I believe in it. One of those things where you don't want, it's the same thing as you vetting people that are coming into your country, right? Obviously outside of those that may come into a country illegally. The idea being is the whole point of a migration process, as much as you trying to move into a new country, is everyone kind of has to go through the same official channels, right? That's the way that the system was intended. And so with that understanding, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense when you have a kingdom established, you have a king and queen, you allow for some people to be approved and denied, but not everyone. It's like, why are you not giving more autonomy and complete control to kings and queens in certain areas of being able to manage their kingdoms? There's nothing stopping someone from coming in with a lower account, spending a bunch of money, and then causing havoc. and or inflating their power for KVK matchmaking. So, and or even just their kingdom status for migration. Now, does that happen all the time? No. Have I seen it happen? Yes. The point overall is that this should be something that the kings and queens have complete control of. And it just feels like, respectfully, a slap in the face when you're being told, no, we're not going to give you kind of complete control of your kingdom, when in this regard, it doesn't really impact anything. Now, if there is data to show that this could leave some players without a place to migrate to, I mean, that's kind of a general statement, because you're always going to have some kingdoms that some players can just not get into, or they won't be accepted in. However, to say that, to use that as a reasoning, to me, is not justifiable, because you would need to show data that shows that players that are applying to kingdoms are not getting in at all to kingdoms to get out of situations they're in. Now, I haven't heard of any cases like that. Now, also, you would need to show that those players that are applying to up to all eligible kingdoms, even if they have a priority list on who they would like to go first, or a preference list, right, from 1 all the way down to 100 or whatever it may be. Do I think that this is one of those things where if they changed it to allow for kings and queens to accept and deny everyone? Large impact. Finally got it out to a point where it's going to affect the community in some kind of major way, or it's going to, have everyone raise their pitch. Not at all. No, it's just no way, shape, or form that's going to happen. So I hope they come back around to this, because I do think that it would really help. Increase rewards. The growth of free-to-play players has always been one of our key concerns. To improve their gaming experience, we've been increasing item rewards, not just for peacekeeping, but across the board. Increasing only peacekeeping rewards could unintentionally heighten players' sense of loss when they miss out, creating an invisible pressure to engage more, which is not our intention. Our focus is to ensure that rewards are increased in a way that most benefits. I would have liked to know what the feedback was here. Even if it was just summarized feedback from some of the kings that provided, or I should say kings or queens, because it would just be nice if they gave that so there's context on exactly what they may have been referring to or addressing. But if they're planning to improve that by increasing kind of general overall rewards across the board, okay. I mean, I do think there's obviously some areas that are more free-to-play friendly than others that free-to-play players can participate and reap benefits and rewards and progress more in than others. So I guess it would almost be nice if they would have addressed some of those things, because it is a real thing. Row leagues. We are committed to providing players with engaging content and enjoyable competitions. The content you're suggesting is currently under development. Please stay tuned for more updates. And again, we've known that the Row League has been in development for a while, so this isn't really anything new. Just kind of a regurgitation, right, of what we've heard before. More playable content. Thank you for your suggestion. We are currently working on new weekly solo queuing, cross-server PvP battlefield game mode. Okay, these are dope. I think these are some of the things that we've even hinted at along with other members from the community, so I wonder what that might look like, but that could be awesome. That will offer players more varied and engaging battle experience in the future. We will also be expanding the Smash the Shadow event, allowing Alliance members to join rallies for PvE activities. Additionally, we have modified the difficulty rules for the Crucible of Courage event, giving players more freedom to choose their difficulty level, such as going straight to the hardest. We are also planning to introduce a new game mode as currently planned in patch 1.0.34, where players can team up and fight each other in the battlefield to earn merits. Darkling, Task, and Augerstone. Oh, we're almost done. Completion. We've identified the issue with lower and will lower the requirements for the Darkling killing task in most seasons. We will also examine the Augerstone completion status to identify why some tasks that should be easily completed are not being finished due to differences in player structures across servers. We will also adjust completion requirements based on related statistics. Okay. I mean, if it improves it, all right. Bastion and Make Way. We understood your concerns about how the Make Way policy affects infantry defense. The goal of this policy is to make siege bastions more garrisonable for defenders. In the past, the attacking side had an advantage in rallying bastions by winning the open field, leaving the defending side with little chance of breaking the rallies without this policy. As a result, we plan to adjust the bastions themselves while keeping the Make Way policy in place. In SOS 3, we will introduce rapid siege warfare to test adjustments to the construction durability of siege bastions moving forward. Okay, so even though it's kind of like a win and a loss in a sense, right? Like, even though, yes, they're not adjusting Make Way and they're keeping it in place, they are adjusting bastions. And more importantly, the line that I really appreciate them articulating is when they say, we will introduce rapid siege warfare to test adjustments to the construction durability of siege bastions moving forward. When you say things like test, it leaves it open. However, what I would have liked to seen them say is we will introduce this to test adjustments to the construction durability of siege bastions moving forward, and make any corrections and/or make any changes necessary based on the results or feedback of said test. Something to that effect, where it speaks to the fact that they're not absolutely locked in on this, and they understand that this is a touch point with the community. And so because of that, they take more of a fluid, more adaptable approach. So that's something I would have liked to see them add, but I do like at least the last line with the way they worded that. Again, if this is going to be SOS 3, so I guess that means that they'll be doing that with Dragonfall, that's going to be coming in for Rapid Siege Warfare. Okay, so I guess that means you guys will be able to test that out. Well, I mean, that's nice because you know it's coming. Warpet. We designed the Warpet training process to be long-term, and at this point, we have no plans to make significant changes to the current system. In the Exchange Store, we aim to provide higher spending players with opportunities that allow lower spending players to benefit as well, by enabling them to sell high star level skills for resources. Since prices are determined by the market itself, we do not plan to make any changes for now. However, we will continue to monitor the Warped system and make improvements with caution. Thank you for your understanding. Okay. I mean, again, it would have been nice to see what the kings and queens specifically were addressing. And I really hope that's the improvement they make for this next time, because they need to be able to show, even if it's just you taking all the feedback and then giving a general consensus or a general summary overview of what were the pain points from the kings and queens that they address, and then giving your answer so we can see that. Because without that, you can really only infer so much. And I'm talking for an everyday player, not for the people that are knee-deep in war pets. I am not one of them. And so being able to see exactly what they touched on and then read the answer, that would have allowed for me, I think, to connect this a little bit better, and along with maybe just the average person, or even if they're not as far in or as advanced in their Warpet knowledge and understanding. Next, KVK seasons and gameplay. Our goal is to make every KVK season unique and fun, which is why we are experimenting with different gameplay designs to increase player participation in battles. Please stay tuned for more updates. We're also planning to speed up the pace of, so these are things they've mentioned already, of KVK seasons, and adjust registration intervals to ensure kingdoms face a wider variety of opponents. In future seasons, we will introduce new mechanics and features that will impact battles, including social, economic, tactical, and strategic elements. These changes will be carefully balanced to avoid disrupting the current growth curve and ecosystem. Okay, interesting. So I wonder if this also means that this could be different win conditions or different victory conditions, if that's what that might mean, or just different ways that you can play for a W or a victory. Again, there's not too much that they really illuminated to here, because a lot of this we've heard already. So let's now go into the final one. And for this one, I'm going to raise this up. So we have kingdom management, probably one of my most exciting topics to always talk about. Marking inactive players for KVK matchmaking. We are planning to implement a similar system where the High King can issue a leave ticket to inactive players currently planned for patch 1.0.34. These players will not count towards KVK matchmaking and will be restricted in-game until the end of the season. They will also receive migration discounts once they accept the ticket. Again, this does not... keep in mind, this is a two-party system. As we've explained before, the king has to issue the ticket, and then the player has to accept it. This does not address what happens when players do not accept a ticket, and or for any players that a leave ticket may not apply for. And again, this is just important to state. It also is one of those things that doesn't immediately help, I guess. I mean, it does help people move out, because you will get a reduction in migration permits that it will cost for you to leave. But when you look at still being in the kingdom, right, how many leave tickets will be issued? How many inactive players do you have? It's one of those things where, unless your kingdom is really monitoring your own kingdom, because you have to kind of do that manually, it would be nice if the game gave you a system. And they, for example, gave you like an interface on the King Queen where it could show you, here's the amount of active players that have logged in for one day or for one time in the last 24 hours, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times in the last 24 hours, and then maybe showing you a list of players. Maybe not a list, but just maybe a number of players. A list might actually be okay, but a number of players at least, and then break that down to like, or these players, like all of the players on this list have been inactive for a day or longer. And then you can maybe filter it by like 3 days, 5 days, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, or longer, right? And or maybe even timers for when those players will not count towards your kingdom anymore. That would actually be cool as well. So if you have players that have been inactive for a week or longer, it'll give, especially if they're higher level, maybe it gives you a timer on some of those players that will say, well, in 12 days or in 9 hours or in 12 and a half days, whatever it is, those players will be inactive. Their city will be removed from the map and they will not count towards any kingdom statuses or KVK matchmaking. And where I'm going with this is it would just be nice to have more of those management options and tool utilizations for a king or queen in said kingdoms, and just for their management teams, really. KVK matchmaking and merits. We do consider the number of players with T5 troops as one factor in KVK matchmaking. However, since earning merits, so that means that they can see that data. However, since earning merits is relatively easy, merits have a lower impact on matchmaking compared to other factors. I mean, what I think, if you're really thinking of the most important factors, it's 1, your current power. 2, the amount of T5 troops you have. 3, your spending averages. And then 4, how much fighting you do. I would argue, I'm sure there's other metrics as well, but off the top of my head, those 4 seem to be pretty highlighted if you're trying to gauge into how active someone will be and determining kind of a general fighting strength for those people. So, man, it'd be nice, dear Lord. It'd be nice if maybe I could try to work something like that in the future. But the problem is that you're not able to see how many troops someone has trained publicly. You can gauge and estimate based on power after a certain level, after a certain, I guess, threshold or minimum. But it almost would be nice if it showed you how many people that they had troops. But again, I understand probably why they wouldn't show that publicly. Ministers and titles. Currently, ministers can assign titles to members by clicking on their home cities. Similar to kings, we also acknowledge that the preparation period in the home realm feels a bit slow. To address this, we plan to shorten the preparation period to speed the season pace. If this change does not yield the desired results, we will consider adding more game modes during the preparation phase. This is just an initial idea, and further decisions will be made once we see the impact of the faster seasons. If players would like more content during KVK, we will also explore the possibility of adding new PvP game modes between battles. So this I actually think is an okay response. They addressed the community concern. We know that we're going to get shortened pre-war periods or home kingdom periods. And this idea that we know more events are coming. And they're also saying that they will consider adding more home kingdom events and more KVK events. I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It would almost be nice if they could present, if they took feedback on the amount of event ideas that people are suggesting, and they allow the community to vote on them. Just to get a water temperature gauge on what are people most interested in. That would be really cool. Like if they did a custom, like if they did a separate, suggestion. So if they did a separate suggestion channel and it was maybe like a game suggestion or something like a dev suggestion or king suggestion, however they named it. And in that channel, they would post, here's a bunch of game ideas that have been submitted to us along with ones that we have thought of. And they don't tell you which ones are community, which ones are dev, but they just want you to take a look at them all and they give it a thumbs up, right? Or a thumbs down. That would be pretty cool. Because, again, even if they're not using it as a whole holistic way to determine what's going to get added into the game or not, they can at least get a gauge on where the interest is within the community. Next one, Warband and Home Realm. In the Home Realm, there isn't a game mode that requires multi-alliance collaboration, and we encourage active players to join the same alliance. The Warband system was designed to facilitate multi-front wars between different alliances from different kingdoms or within a single kingdom. Regarding Warband leadership, we currently allow an R4 or higher player to serve in this role. We'd like to know what specific functions you envision for Warband leadership, as we have already assigned responsibilities to Warband-related titles. The whitelist will be expanded in the 1.0.33 patch. Hope you enjoy. So again, this is one of those responses that there's not enough context. We don't know exactly what points were mentioned from the kings or queens to where this response could seem great or maybe it could seem lackluster. And there was a number of those throughout this Q&A where I hope as an improvement next time, they include these were the main points that were brought up by kings or queens, and then we can see what their response is going to be. Because without knowing that, there is some loose context, and you just don't really have the full picture. However, with all of that being said, there was a couple new things that we learned here, and I, for one, am all for them continuing to do this. I think it's great that we're seeing more community engagement, and this is arguably the first true community Q&A or community dev Q&A that they've done. So hopefully we see more. Good on them. And, you know, your boy's always here. With that in mind, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Anything that stuck out to you? Nah, we just got a little bit of the same. Yes, it would be nice if we also heard what some of those points were made by the kings or queens so we can understand the answers a bit more. Anything else? Let me know. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.